Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwan, and today we're going to be talking about the World Eaters. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. If you have any suggestions for topics of Warhammer 40K or any questions you guys would like us to answer in video form, please comment down below. Don't forget to hit the little bell notification icon to stay updated to see if we did create a video for you. And thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the World Eaters. Before they were known as the World Eaters, the Warhounds had a reputation for their ferociousness in battle. They were also known to fight honorably and pride themselves in their fury and courage above all else. To this legion, life itself was war, a conflict that never ended from cradle to grave. And the Legion of Astartes were this concept in its purest form. Failure in battle was not tolerated. Surrender was never contemplated, and mercy was a quick death delivered to a foe that had fought with bravery. Cowards themselves deserved no more than savage butchery, the reward for their fears. This simple but brutal code of war was the Warhounds' article of faith, and they extended it to both their own numbers and their enemies. The Warhounds' first recorded engagement was during the Sapphic Liberation, where they served as a spearhead of shock troops, mounting direct annihilation assaults on enemy forces, both in open battle and fortified positions. They were able to carry the attack despite their then relatively small number by sheer courage and the fury of the violence they could unleash. After its initial battle, the new legion seemed to have been largely held in reserve by the Emperor during the latter unification wars, and right through the subsequent reconquest of the Sol system. This may have been done in case of a sudden reversal of the fortunes of war, or as certain veiled evidence implies, as a weapon to be unleashed in case of disloyalty amongst the Emperor's own. After the Great Crusade kicked off, the Warhounds developed a reputation for victory, although at a cost, and it was said that every assault they conducted ended in one of two ways: victorious slaughter or simply slaughter, either of which left the foe in no condition to resist further. However effective the Legion was, there were many who fought alongside them that found them also to be unpredictable, intemperate, and dangerous to anything that stood in their path, combatant, civilian, or otherwise. Rumors soon began to circulate that the Warhounds would put to the sword human auxiliary regiments of the Imperial Army they saw as failing them in battle, and they kept a guarded distance from other legions. It was noted by outsiders that the Warhounds' officers enforced an unusually harsh code of discipline in their ranks, which was indeed needed, as the Astartes of the Legion often proved fractious, and bloodshed between the Battle Brothers was far from uncommon. When they were reunited with their Primarch, the Warhounds were soon influenced by Angron's cultural beliefs and blood rites that would become an important part of the World Eater's core beliefs, as the culture within the Legion shifted to ever more violent and bloodthirsty mores and values. These quickly echoed in the shifting skin of the Legion's own rites and ceremonies, and the martial traditions of old Terra, never strong in the Warhounds, who had prided themselves on their fury and courage above all else, disappeared altogether and were replaced by Angron's own red code of butchery and savage competition. When the newly dubbed World Eaters departed their training world of Bolt under their new master for the first time, it was under a new badge of the Great Fanged Maw, poised to crush a life-bearing world, an image that was to prove entirely fitting to describe what was to come. The arrival of the Primarch Angron brought a primitive, almost tribal unity to a newly renamed World Eaters, and Angron quickly became the example of warriorhood to be aspired to by this legion. His first and most dubious honor was to be the one Primarch to refuse the Emperor's benevolence and to turn his back on the Imperium's claim of conquest. Angron, master of his doom-slaved army, cared nothing for the galaxy worth of dreams and triumphs. He had wished only to die with those rebels who'd escaped the gladiatorial pits of Desha with him. This ragged army of brothers and sisters had been holed up in the mountains with carrion birds and snow bears for company, waiting to starve or fall in battle, whichever death came first. His legion was told of Angron's refusal of the Emperor's offer when they first met on Nuceria. Their Primarch had defied the Emperor, and the Warhounds did not hate Angron for his choice. They worshipped him for it. No Primarch better understood the bonds of brotherhood than one who turned his back on the Emperor, the Imperium, on life itself, so that he could die side by side with his brothers and sisters. To the legionnaires of the World Eaters, the mutilated, bloody, reeking, wrathful figure that stalked amongst them as their master swiftly became a kind of savage messiah, a greater warrior than any they had known, an exemplar of a brutal ideal of honor and combat that sank to their souls. Angron became to them their first master, displacing for many the loyalty they had once given to the Emperor, as Angron became their judge, their general, and a conqueror whose banner they would follow into the depths of hell. Under his influence, the competitive, hot-blooded tension that had always roiled under the surface of the Legion's psyche was channeled and given form. Gladiatorial combat, never without blood spill, and when taken to its extreme, fatal, became both the crux of the World Eaters' training, honing their individual battle skill to a razor edge, and a vital outlet for the pent-up aggression and frustrated bloodlust of the Legion between war zones. Eventually, the World Eaters' thirst for battle was artificially amplified by the use of surgically implanted butcher's nails that were similar to the technology that had been implanted in Angron's own skull during the Nucerian gladiatorial training. Bloodletting was a very common practice carried out by the Astartes of the World Eaters Legion. Angron and his World Eaters were known to cut their hands and smear the blood on the visors of their helmets before going into a fight. As time went on, blood rites became more and more important to the Legion's rituals. This would eventually culminate in the corrupted War Master Horus, turning the Legion's savage rituals towards the bloody-handed worship of chaos, in particular the blood god Khorne. Angron introduced his World Eaters to a new tradition known as the Triumph Robe. This was something that was shown to Captain Karn by his Primarch. Angron explained that before a battle, one would carve a line in one's body, and after said battle, you would either let it heal normally to show you were victorious, or would rub some dirt from the battlefield into the wound to show you were defeated. This would cause the scar to appear to be a red twist if victorious, or a black twist if defeated. Warriors could then keep track of their battle honors and gauge each other's prowess. Angron had the longest Triumph Robe within his legion. A ridge of scar tissue began at the base of Angron's spine. It traveled up his backbone, then veered to the left and around his body, riding over his hips and curving around to his front. The length of his continuous scar seemed to expand and then thin again, plowing and gouging the skin in some places, vanishing entirely where the Primarch's healing powers had overcome it. The scar looped around Angron's body, spiraling up over his belly, around his ribs, towards his chest, a little past the right of his sternum. It abruptly stopped. Angron, it was said, had no black twists. When the Emperor spirited Angron away from his world on the eve of battle, where he was ready to give his life fighting side by side with his fellow slaves, he was denied the right to return to his world. He couldn't pick up the soil to make a black twist. Unable to wear his failure, he was bitter with the Emperor that he couldn't fight alongside them, and even more so, that he couldn't even commemorate them properly. One of the more bloody traditions introduced to the World Eaters were gruesome contests of head-takings between members of individual squads, various squads, and the chapter's companies and captains. This may just have been an easy way to confirm kills, but it had been surmised by Imperial scholars that the World Eaters saw the head of a foe to be important. It is unknown if the totals of collected heads were kept for just a single battle, a war, or a warrior's career. Though many of the rituals that Angron introduced into his legion were frowned upon by the Emperor, it was only the practice of implanting his warriors with the butcher's nails that completely got Angron censured by the Emperor, and yet he continued to do it regardless. And those were 40 facts on how the World Eaters Legion changed after Angron was introduced. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to share it with your friends on Facebook, Reddit, whatever social media you guys use, or jump on over to Patreon and support us on Patreon. It's just a simple $1 a month. With that dollar, it goes to our research to create our own butcher's nails. We want to be more aggressive and just badass in general. So we want to create our own butcher's nails. If you guys can't support us on Patreon, we understand, simply by liking, commenting, and sharing. It helps out the channel. And then we also have One Mind Syndicate merch. We are selling some cool objective markers that you can use in 40K on the tabletop. Each individual objective marker is a specific race, or it has to do with a specific race within Warhammer 40K. So if you guys want to support the channel but also get something cool in return, you have these objective markers that you can buy. Link in the description for that. There's only 30, and 30 is all we're ever going to make. So yeah, jump on over there if you guys want some cool objective markers. But with that said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Oh, I used to put my